16, I was far from your average Catholic schoolgirl. I spent a great deal of energy pushing the boundaries of what was considered the standard uniform. I had the obligatory plaid skirt, but I spruced it up with 20-eye brushed suede Dr. Martens boots, bleached blonde hair, half of which had been shaved off, a black leather jacket, and a nose piercing, which in 1989 hadn't quite caught on. To top it off, I had eyeliner that Margot Tannenbaum would say was a bit much. My appearance was stark in contrast to the super suburban gated Phoenix neighborhood of custom 6,000 square foot homes that still somehow felt cookie cutter. The only black family for 20 miles belonged to the Phoenix Suns guard and now Sacramento mayor Kevin Johnson. I had a pretty apathetic view of religion, and even more so with school. When I wasn't in third period using a safety pin to systematically pull the mustard-colored stripes out of my plaid skirt thread by thread, you could find me sitting on the roof of my house at 3 a.m. listening to The Cure, pre-disintegration, waiting for my friend Julie to come pick me up. I snuck out of my house almost every night, but not to have sex or party or drink Boone's Farm. That was for normal Catholic schoolgirls. No, we would go to Denny's to drink coffee and smoke cigarettes all night, or we would go to Julie's to watch The Fugitive. But around the holidays, I had a very special hobby: stealing baby Jesuses from front yard nativity scenes. As you can imagine any suburban red state gated neighborhood to be, there were a lot of Catholics and Lutherans, which meant a lot of chintzy, oversized plastic nativity scenes. I found the tacky, shameless displays of idolatry sickening, but not in an I'm offended by your depiction of our Lord kind of way. It was more like a how despicable that you mix awesome commercialism with your stupid religion kind of way. So I would steal the Jesus every time I saw one. At least I was creative about it. Sometimes Julie and I would leave cut and paste ransom notes with messages like, King Herod was here. Or 30 pieces of silver or the Messiah gets it. Julie was the getaway driver. I was the Jesus snatcher. That's Julie. We had it down to an art. Since we were in the foothills, there were a lot of slight inclines on the streets of our subdivision known as Ahwatukee. This made for ideal Jesus-stealing conditions because we could park at the top of the hill, steal the Jesus, then roll the car down a ways before we started it. During the holiday season, I would have anywhere from 5 to 25 Jesuses in my trunk. You know when you see criminals getting pulled over on cops and they pop the trunk and find giant stashes of guns and kilos? Well, if anyone ever searched my car, they'd open the trunk and find a pile of Jesuses. Speaking of which, what is the plural of Jesus anyhow? Until I started collecting, there was no reason to consider the plural because there'd always just been only one Jesus. Is it Jesuses? Jezi? Perhaps the Hebrew Jesum? And that got me thinking of what the collective noun would be. I mean, there's the obvious flock of Jesuses, but I prefer the more befitting murder of Jesuses. And we didn't just steal the Jesuses, we incorporated them into our everyday lives. We would take them on road trips. Once we took them to Disneyland and snuck them onto Space Mountain. Another time, Julie and I took a trip to Four Corners. We set one of them down in the middle, and I remember thinking, he may not be everywhere, but he's definitely in 4 states at once right now. One time, Julie and I brought one to Denny's late night, and a group of us ended up making a pipe out of him. He already had a hole in his butt, so you could stick a Christmas light in there, and we used that for a carb. So we just drilled another hole and added a bowl. You could put the pot in his crotch and suck on his head. Including the Jesuses in our daily activities inspired a lot of my friends to jack the Jesuses from their neighborhoods as well. Then their friends caught on, and their friends, and so on, until Jesuses started missing from Mesa, Chandler, Gilbert, Glendale, Scottsdale, even as far north as Moon Valley. Julie and I had become unlikely suburban heroes. Spreading the gospel of Jesus stealing far and wide was easy when you went to a magnet school. The trend became so widespread that eventually Julie and I would stop to snatch a Jesus, and he'd already be missing. The growing popularity continued well after I graduated nearly 20 years ago, and culminated with a news story my mom sent me this past year from the Mountain Gazette. Apparently, churches and families are installing GPS tracking devices in their Jesuses. Not the Mary, not the Joseph, not the wise men, just the Jesus. It was a proud moment for me to have been a pioneer of such a widespread phenomenon that people now feel it necessary for their Jesus to have LoJack. Baby Jesus theft even has its own wiki page. And in his autobiography, The Long Road Out of Hell, Marilyn Manson admits to stealing Jesuses and replacing them with hams. I wish I could say I was the originator of this idea, but the first known pop culture Jesus theft that occurred was in the series Dragnet in 1953. Not only was it the only episode ever to be made both in black and white and color, but it was the only episode not based on an actual police case. I think back fondly on my collection of baby Jesuses, and I remember it was pretty eclectic. Most of them were the obvious waspy Aryan Jesuses with the telltale blonde hair and blue eyes of the common Middle Easterner. But every once in a while, I would hit the mother lode and find a black or Hispanic Jesus. But no matter how many Jesuses I would steal, I would always write the unsuspecting victim's address on a Post-it note and affix it to the respective Messiah. Because, in true Catholic fashion and driven by guilt, I would return each and every one. On Easter. With holes in their hands. Thank you, guys.
Give it up for Allison Gill.